Measuring the private schools. I think that perhaps what we should propose is disclosure. If we would all agree, these are the standards, this is what is expected, not only in terms of outcomes we are discussing, but also the quality of the school, what they provide, what they know, and if we could agree on some standards, it would not be too difficult then to measure for the various schools and disclose in each state what is happening. I think that, to me, that will be the best accountability, because I don't think that anybody wants to be the lagger behind. So far, we say, the PMSEC is saying we have an inspectorate, but I don't think that I've seen somewhere where you disclose in a very clear way, we have statistics of how many teachers, how many schools, and so forth. But going beyond, based on some clear indicators, and providing the information so that we can create a very healthy competition across state would be, in my view, perhaps a very practical way of going. And that is not only for the secondary school, but also for the university.
Yes.
Because so far, everybody is a bit in the dark.
Udomino, I know you are a recruiter of, talking to you now as a HR person. What's your experience with Nigerian graduates in terms of the output that we get from Nigerian graduates? Have you been hiring Nigerian graduates?
I think I will respond to that question in two ways. By the way, I'm the HR director for ExxonMobil, so I should know. And I'll tell you that our graduates are not bad. They are not bad. I'll be honest with you. It may take a lot of efforts to crystallize and come out with the best. So you want to hire maybe 20 engineers, probably may have 2,000 people apply, and they have to go through a battery of tests and interviews. But my experience so far has shown that if we continue to pay attention, our graduates are not bad, our students are not bad. We just need to incentivize them. But going back quickly to the comment that the DG made, I think it would be unfair to treat that question in isolation. We need to look at the totality. It may be convenient, given some of the facts on the table, to blame ASU. It may also be convenient to blame the federal government. But one thing I can say is this. As a Nigerian and as somebody who is truly committed to this country, there are certain sectors that should be taken out of the realm of politics. Education is one of such. And it is also important. Out of the realm of politics. It is also important. In fact, one of the outcomes of this conference should be a determination to get the right people to run the Ministry of Education at all levels.
Now, that's the problem. Okay, that's a very, very popular view. And as they say in the National Assembly, I can see that the eyes have it. Now that the eyes have it, we still have to go back to an issue. It will take a political decision to bring the right people to the education sector. That's the chicken and egg situation. So now my question is, if it will take a political decision to do that, the politicians have to be guided by data, by information, by assessments. And what UWESO is doing is one credible way to say education is not working in state A, in state B, because such and such is not happening. So how do we frame it that we can take our message to the political leaders? And Joseph, I'm asking you this question. How can we frame these issues for our political leaders, for them to see the social pressure of taking the right decisions?
I'm not an activist, but...
so how do you frame these issues
I'll
for
give you my
your
perspective.
clients?
I'll give you my perspective. And I agree with your conclusion that we need to get the right people to run Ministry of Education, to run Ministry of Health, because those two human capital elements are very important. But I slightly disagree that the quality of our graduates are where it's supposed to be. And I'm being very practical. Also, I'm an employer of labor, and people who apply to ExxonMobil might be the cream de la cream, of the unemployed population.
2-1 and above.
And the truth at the end of the day is that we're getting to a situation where we're having challenges. And I'll come back to your question of how do we frame our problem. We're having challenges where you are recruiting, and then you are getting biased towards looking for people with degrees from diaspora. You are getting biased to looking for people with degrees from private universities. And when people go through aptitude tests, you have a situation in my own system. For every 100 people that sit for aptitude test, one possibly make it, to the final stage. And somebody did mention, and we all see the examples, take away the engineer from his engineering field and ask him to write a letter. And the guy has challenges. So we need to fix that. For me, beyond infrastructure issues, beyond all the things we've talked about, in fixing this problem, teacher is at the bedrock of this problem. And there's no rocket science about it. You don't need to create the wheel. Studies have been done.
So how do we frame it to the politicians?
Let me tell you, in Finland, where PISA, who is highly rated on international student assessment and the rest of them, what you find out is that they stepped back in Finland and decided that, number one, they need to empower teachers. Because the profession of teaching is not even attractive anymore. So how do you put your education sector in the hands of people who are not even respected in society? So they created a 3-year master's program for every graduate that comes out of school and wants to be a teacher. And that 3-year program is sponsored both by government and some special funding. And what then happens is that if you come out of that 3-year program and you pass, you're a valid teacher, your salary is as competitive as a medical doctor and as other professionals. And go and check what has happened to Finland in the last 5-7 years.
Yes, can you help me frame this issue for
framing
politicians?
the issue, there are statistics to show that and if you look at DG's speech and the chairman's speech, there are enough facts to show that we are heading towards calamity as a nation. We don't want a situation where we'll be colonized by the Western world or by Chinese. Chinese companies are coming here. All the other Indian companies are coming here, bringing technology. Very soon they will bring human capital.
Okay, thank you very much.
So we need to portray it in that manner that we need to stand up and ensure
I want to take this comment from Gori. Yes, what's your take?
I guess from the conversation that we've had already, following this theme about how do we frame this issue, my experience, and it's not limited to the 2 days that I've been here, is that, the issues for accountability, and dare I say, the virtues of education and fixing education, they're well understood. And, if you need some data, think about how much we're spending educating our children in Ghana, in the UK and in the US. So, and most of the people who are doing that are the people who you're asking us to frame this conversation for. So there's an understanding of the need to act. But what we need is really to move towards what I describe as social pressure. And I say that on the assumption that I believe that there's a disconnect between the levels of investment, and from what we've heard over the last 2 days, they've been significant, by African standards at least, and the outcomes that come through. My sense as a leader, I run a small organization compared to running Nigeria or a state, but I understand that sometimes as leaders we're lost in the fog of detail, and we rely on information that we get to see how well we're doing. And if we're surrounding ourselves by people who are telling us something slightly different than the truth, or a version of the truth that suits us, then there's a problem. And this is why, in addition to any sort of state-focused accountability framework, this is why we've got to move to something that empowers citizens. We're not asking citizens to check up on governments alone, but we're asking citizens to recognize through a process like the Uwezo process, what they can do to improve the situation. And some of these things are very simple. One, allowing your children to go to school is at the basic level. Doing your homework with your children is another thing, which my wife has ensured that I do. You know, it's things like this.
Yes.
But also the data that is collected from these elements add to the data that's collected from the conventional, the state sense, and, you know, the citizens will provide our politicians, our policymakers with the information that they need.
Yes, so you want a citizen-led approach. Director, what is the way forward for creating an accountability framework?
Well,
1 minute.
You see, for me, one thing that always boggles my mind is, you see, Nigerians, are generally, we tend to be very sentimental. And you see, for me, I don't think, sentiment, will take us anywhere. Just like I have said earlier, the topic, before us is putting up an accountability framework.
Yes.
And the issue of development of education is a collective responsibility.
Yeah.
We all have roles and responsibility. But one good thing is in Nigeria, it is always easier to point at fingers.
Yeah.
That look, that person is not doing right. While we don't focus on our roles and responsibilities. So one thing that I just want to advise is,
yes,
as citizens,
should do
one important thing is we should look at these accountabilities and ensure that they are all put in place and ensured.
What is the way forward? Just a minute, the last word.
Yeah, very briefly. I think that what I got this morning from the Singaporean, and I went to Singapore, was that